Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 201. I'm Enigmius and today we're continuing with the NCC-1031 USS Discovery build. It's a hybrid now, it's not the USS Discovery anymore, but it's got some components that are very, very similar. The saucer section is basically the Discovery saucer section. The nacelles are going to be basically the Discovery's nacelles, and then everything in between is just kind of made up as we went along. I removed a bunch of blocks from the ones that we placed in the last episode because, as I mentioned, I wanted to rework things and kind of bring them more in line with the profiles that we had already basically laid out for the front portion of the nacelle. So it's kind of one of those things where I knew as I was working on it, or more or less as I was finishing the build session and looking at what I had done, that I was going to have to make some pretty substantial changes in order to kind of bring things in line with what I was aiming to do. So that's what I basically set up to do for this episode, is remove a lot of the stuff that we placed so that we can begin the process of putting the better stuff into position. We spent a bit of time in the last episode working from that central profile, the one with the yellow blocks, sort of like the front profile, working from that position towards the front. So we got a feel for how these panels come together and how we can shift the panels in to follow the different profiles, the side profile and the top profile, so that we get something resembling what we had originally had in mind from the beginning, which is the very gradual curves. And we're using the blocks that are available to us so that all of the steps, those things that we push in from the side or from the top, are just going in by a half block. And that way we get a half block of exposure, perpendicular exposure, but it's pretty small. And the alternative is to try and get a more seamless kind of exposure and end up with something that's big and bulky and still stands out and doesn't really look any better for having set it up that way. So it to me, I'm looking at it and I feel pretty comfortable with it so far. I may come up with an idea that would allow us to refine it even further at some point in the future, but for now I'm satisfied that that's going to be the way that we're going to be working it. And I haven't really bothered yet transferring what we're doing here over to the other side of this nacelle. So we've got the mirror mode turned on, and whatever we're doing here is going on the other nacelle. But as far as the inward side, I guess, of this nacelle, I've decided to wait until we're all done, happy with it, and then we'll duplicate it over to the other side, which should go much, much faster and be hopefully the kind of thing that brings it all together, and then you look at it and say, yes, that's what we were aiming for. It's kind of touch and go right now. I realized as I was getting ready to record and get everything set up and kind of thinking in terms of what we might have as a theme for this episode, a key thing that we were talking about, that there was no key theme. My goal was just simply have this not looking like the worst looking part of the ship, which I realized is a pretty excellent goal to have at any stage of development, design, working on something. If you're looking at creating something with aesthetic appeal, designing it so that it doesn't look like crap compared to everything else on the ship is a pretty good goal. The downside to all of this futzing about is that I find it very fatiguing when we get down to the business of having to switch blocks around and then remove them and then put new blocks in place and then remove them, and constantly trying to think in terms of what we could put in a particular place with the blocks that we have. And when it doesn't work, coming up with other blocks that we could put in that place. And if that doesn't work, then we remove those blocks and the blocks around them and see what could we do to give ourselves a different approach altogether so that we can try other blocks in slightly different places to accomplish the same goal. And as a result, I took a break for a little while, and I came back and I got everything ready and I started working on it and spent quite a bit of time just working and reworking this very small section right where we're looking at right now. about 40 to 45 minutes, and then I realized that I hadn't hit record and it was all gone. And then I realized that that was probably for the best, because it was definitely not the kind of thing that I would want to watch. By the time we speed it up and remove all of the block shape switching, probably would have added 8 or 9 minutes to the length of this video, but would have been 8 or 9 minutes basically looking at this very specific point, changing things over and over and over again. Fortunately, I realized my error, and I was able to record a little bit of footage of just kind of moving around so that you can see what it ended up being when I was done. And the understanding, of course, that it's never done until the blueprint is up and it's done. But in this case, I can see looking for opportunities to continue to rework certain areas, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, I couldn't be happier with the difference between what we ended up with and what we're working towards versus what we had at the end of the last episode. It's definitely been one of those things where continually learning and kind of coming up with ideas that you realize that you have the opportunity to use those over and over and over again. Other designs, other builds. So it's been a rewarding process trying to get this sorted out. It's been a time-consuming process, and that's okay. But I'm also glad that we're past most of it. So now what remains, we'll just kind of talk a little bit about what the next couple of episodes are going to involve, and then I'll let you watch the last little bit in peace. Next episode, we're going to start from that middle section with the yellow profile blocks and move towards the back. Realistically, I expect to be able to get all the way to the back and start working on the back end all in the next episode. The back end isn't going to be anywhere nearly as complex as the front end, because it's just a slope, a plain straightforward slope moving down the back. We aren't going to have to worry too much about the profiles and making them all come together in certain ways, because it's such a straightforward kind of thing. Once that's done, between episodes, I'll go through and I'll finish off the top sections of the nacelles, the parts that we've basically done on one side we have to do on the other. No point making you watch that whole process a second time. We'll just get that all squared away, and then we'll have the underside to take care of on the nacelles, the refinements and finishing details on the saucer section, and then a little bit of work on the interior, kind of smoothing things off and getting it ready for release. So it's been a long build. It's been an enormous ship up to this point, and that explains why it's been such a long build. But the light at the end of the tunnel is visible, and we are working our way towards it with all appropriate speed. I think that the most challenging parts are over, but now that I realize I just said that, it probably means that we're going to come across something we hadn't thought of, and it's going to just ruin everything for us. So on that note, I'll leave you to it. Like I say, there's a little bit of building left on this front end, and then a minute or two of just kind of scooting around looking at things, following the little bit of refining that I did without the record button on. So if you want to be notified about the next and future episodes in this and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.